read in the record. What other suggestions?
Yes. I just wanted to read them into the meeting so that we would.
There are people who are thinking about this. We get calls every day.
Yes. You know, I mean, Richard and I started talking about it about a month ago. I know he was going to, I don't know if he came up and talked to you guys yet, but members of the public have also reached out. Questions, comments. Do I have a quorum yet?
I'm here.
And Laura.
I guess we do, because Richard's here. I see Richard.
Okay. So I'm going to get started because it's after 2 o'clock. Call to order the Town of Woodstock Town Board meeting. This is a workshop meeting for November 10th at 2 p.m. This is going to take the place of our 7 o'clock meeting tonight. And one of the reasons we want to do it during the day is that we want to start to have a discussion about our STR law, and which has been in effect now for what, a year and a half, almost 2 years. And since last June, so it's a little over a year, almost a year and a half.
Well, 2 summers. It's been through 2 summers.
Yes, and just get a sense of how it's working and what we might improve on. So this, just for the record, this will not be, you know, we're not making decisions today. We're talking with the town employees to get their perspective. We'll have other meetings during our regular evening meetings where we'll get input from the public and we can figure out where we need to go with this.
So Bill, who is in the room with you? I can see we have Melissa on for planning board.
Yes, I have Kristen, Butch, and Angela from the building department.
Okay. Hey.
Bill?
Is anybody else on from the planning board?
Melissa,
Melissa?
you're muted, Melissa.
Yeah, Melissa's planning board.
Just me.
Okay. Richard, you started to ask a question?
No, I just want to say a couple things before we get started.
Yes.
Just to agree with you. We're not making decisions.
Oh, wait
today.
a second. Did you say you were going to agree with me?
No, you misunderstood.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, basically what we want to do is listen to people.
Yeah.
And that's really what I want to do today and hear what people are thinking. I think there's a few things we could talk about real quick, but such as SUPs at the planning board. Yeah, that's really all. I want to listen. So.
Yeah. Now, I have a quick question. I did see the email from Jeff Collins. Should we be looking for other emails? I know Jeff Collins plans to make it, but said he'd be late. Are there other emails with information we should be referencing? I know we want to listen to everybody.
Melissa or Peter Cross sent us something about SUPs and a couple other things.
Okay.
That was what, 2 days ago, Melissa, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I gave it to Bill yesterday. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, there's that one. And I saw Jess just recently. I don't know that, you know, we can't really tell the ZBA what to do here in some of these cases, but we can certainly talk to intent of what's in the law.
Well, I know that. And
Did I send Peter's email? Because I'm looking here at it. It wasn't an email. Did everybody get a copy of that?
yeah, I thought I saw it. I didn't. I don't.
Okay.
I'll have to go pull it back up again to read it. But I thought I saw it.
His main concern was the SUP flood to the planning board, if I'm correct, Melissa. Which we should state maybe right off the bat. Bill, you can chime in on this. That was not originally in the law, but when we talked about it with the planning board, they seemed to want us to send it to the planning board, all those SUPs. We can always change that, but the planning board reviewed that and seemed to want the SUPs at one point.
I think they vacillated back and forth a little bit, and I think there was mixed feelings. But ultimately, I think the majority said yes, send it to us.
But certainly, I was never a big proponent of that because I think it just floods the planning board. But
I agree.
You know, and there may be cases where it's needed, but in general, I'm not sure it needs to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking for the Peter Cross email. If somebody could tell me who sent it.
Ashley, Bill's office.
So Ashley sent it, and what day did you send it? Because I'd like to pull it up.
Yesterday.
So
Okay,
listen, while you're looking for that, Laura, what I'm gonna do, since these all really start with the building department as the gatekeeper, I'm gonna open up the floor to the 3 employees from that department first and get your thoughts.
Okay, well, if it's, start with the sending it to the planning board. If you take.
I'm not able to hear.
You're gonna have to, you might even have to come up. I can put a mask on and you can come a little, as you guys come closer, we can.
Can you get that?
I can.
You're on trial.
Yeah, move up to the witness stand. Do you swear that
Yeah.
your testimony, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
If we take the SUP into consideration, when it goes to the bed and breakfast law, it's around establishments. So when there's more than 3 bedrooms in a bed and breakfast, it would require it. And it's, again, it's about parking, sewage, not necessarily lighting, but those would be the 2 main things that the planning board would look into being a bed and breakfast establishment. So the requirement of it for the short-term rental could be under the same scrutiny as just bed and breakfast, being that it's only establishments or over a certain amount.
So that would reduce.
That would reduce it. But right now, there's a bunch pending still in the planning. Right now, we've got a total of 121 cases at that we've collected fees for that are waiting to go in there, and there's a few more. Right now, there's a total of about 28 applications left to hit the 285 cap if they were all approved. And that includes some that have been permits that are still just available, being about 8 of them, and then 18 or so that have either been withdrawn, denied, or have some other reason for those applications that weren't approved or won't be approved. So out of those 28, I'm suggesting that they should only be offered to owner-occupieds.
Well, we did set a cap on non-owner occupied, didn't we?
Well, you did set a cap on owner-occupieds of 150 when the cap was 390.
No, we changed. When we changed the cap this year, we split it up again.
Oh, I didn't get that memo.
We didn't need it.
Are you
Yeah.
sure? We did. I'll have to go back and take a look at that, Richard.
Yes, I remember a discussion.
I remember a discussion. I don't remember what the
No,
final
and if I
resolution.
remember correctly, you just wanted, Bill, you wanted to leave it wide open, just a total number.
Yes.
And I remember correctly, we decided on splitting it again. But I have to go back and look.
Okay.
Okay, well, I don't know what that number was, but if we keep that
But-
number right now at the one, I believe actually one just came in today that they got a check for, so now it's at 122. So if you keep it at that 122 and everything
Butch, can you
else-
go back to the SUPs before we get too far away from it? What
Sure.
would be your recommendation?
Well, it's already in the process, and we've had people that have already paid for it and gotten it and moved through that process. So to kind of change move the goalpost mid
Right.
mid play or toward the end of the play isn't fair to the people that have already been through it.
Okay.
well,
That's
well,
a good point.
Well, the point of this discussion, though, is how should we be moved forward? So just because we've been doing something a certain way over the past year and a half, if we think that's not the right way to proceed, the whole point here is to say, how should we proceed? I hear what you're saying, it's not
With
fair.
new cases, with
With
new
new-
applications.
So
Or for 2020,
the people that have already paid for the application fee or are in the process, which now is 122, we leave that at that cap. Leave that it. That's it. They've let them go through the process, and any future till we meet the cap are only owner occupieds.
well, okay, so what I'm saying is, we're towards the end of 2020. So I think that whatever we're deciding here might be a case of what do we do for 2021 cases? Everybody's got to reapply even if you've already approved in 2020, you still have to reapply in 2021.
No,
although-
no.
Now, once they're approved, they're approved. They renew, they
renew.
renew
They renew.
their permit, but it's not a reapplication.
Okay, I got you. But I still have to get
They don't
They
come
don't-
back. They only have
they don't-
one process with the planning board for the special use permit. And the
Right.
special use permit is valid indefinitely. The building department keeps up with the inspections annually and the fees.
He's
Okay,
talking it, Butch. I think he's talking.
okay. So what you're saying is there's 121 cases where you collected the fee and they're waiting for the SUP. And I agree, it makes sense to let them go through. But if we wanted, that's what I thought I heard said. But if we wanted to change, if we wanted to make the SUP only needed for greater than 3-bedroom, what would be a good time frame to swap over to that new way of doing it, if that's what we wanted to do?
Well, that's the way it's structured right now, is that it's all non-owner occupied needed to have it, and owner occupied with 3-bedroom or more in residential areas,
Mhm.
in the residential districts,
Mhm.
are what needed an SUP. And as I said, if they've already filled out their applications and they've already paid the fee and they're already in the process, we just leave it at that number. We just don't accept any more applications for non-owner occupieds or requiring the SUP.
I would just
We can
remind
smooth it down.
I would remind the board that the reason I suggested that we put the cap in, set it separately by resolution, is because we can change it day to day, literally. So
And
we
I
don't,
do have the information that was voted on in May
go
for
ahead.
the STRs. So the cap is set at 280 with a maximum of 75
Right.
non-owner occupied.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you,
So are we, I think we might be over that.
We're past that.
Yeah.
We were-
Yeah.
So that never got to you. Okay.
Sorry, Jackie,
Oh,
Yes,
better approve.
did you say the non-owner occupied was 170?
no,
Would you say it again?
the
I'm sorry.
the cap is set at 280,
Okay,
and of that, non-owner occupied is set at 75.
okay. Yeah, thank you.
So if there's 121 cases where you collected fees, then probably a bunch of them are non-owner occupied. So we're saying we went over the 75 cap for non-owner occupied. So that's why Butch, you're saying don't accept any more for non-owner occupied.
Yeah, and at this point, if it's 280, I thought it was 285, so that's 5 more down
Right.
from that number. So
23.
yeah, so now there's basically 23 that could be left.
Can I ask, maybe Melissa knows, but how far back does this backlog go? I know that basically, I think,
I began, in my little memo that I put up, I'd say November of 2019 was when we started seeing them. The first application fee for these was August 14th, 2019. And then obviously with COVID, it kind of put a halt on everything.
right, well, that's what I'm asking. When did you stop? As I understood it, you kind of stopped looking at SUPs when
Yeah.
COVID came.
Yeah, just
So
for the
was-
SDRs,
So
but
part
yeah,
of that, part of that was probably before we changed the cap.
yep. Yeah, yes, I think you're right. I mean, if I have the number of owner occupied is definitely a handful compared to non-owner occupied. Yeah, and then we completed 23 cases are totally done. And then there's another 29 that have to be rescheduled that were mid-process or starting the process with the planning board when COVID hit. And then I have 56 files that haven't been seen by the planning board to date.
Wow.
So I'm making notes and trying to reconcile the numbers.
But see,
So-
here, Laura, just hold on. The problem is, I think we have a batch of SUP requests in before we changed the cap and we have some after we changed the cap. So I don't know how we're gonna reconcile this.
Well, I think if we collected money, it's kind of hard to tell somebody, oops, you made a mistake. But,
Yeah, but even the cap was different, so.
well,
Well,
exactly.
But it was moot. The cap was moot because we hadn't reached it, we hadn't gotten near it, so you could have changed it.
Hey there.
before we get to it.
Yeah.
I can't hear.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
Right.
So we're saying 121 cases where the fee was collected that are still waiting, and 121 cases with still waiting. But then I heard Melissa say 23 cases done, 29 to be rescheduled, 56 files not seen by the planning board. So I was trying to reconcile what
The 121 number is total cases through the planning board.
total
Yeah,
cases.
And there's only probably 6 of them out of that number that are actually owner occupied or so, but it's very few.
It's small.
It's very.
Yes.
Okay, so there are 121 total cases through the planning board, and then in addition to that, but when Butch said 23 cases done, wouldn't that mean they were through the planning board?
The 121 is the total number. The 23 cases done have went through the planning board, and that's who have come in and went through the process and finished.
They
The
already have.
121 is the total number of SDR cases through the planning board.
How
that
many
have received
cases went,
money.
how many cases just went before the building department? I think is what Laura's trying to get that number, because that's separate from yours, correct?
Yes, I don't have that number.
No, Butch would.
How many,
How many went through your office without going to the planning board? I'm just trying to, because everybody's stepping on one another here.
for the SUP so far, just for SUP so far, we have 122.
Not the SUPs, because they go to the planning board. How many have you guys approved without planning board?
It wouldn't-
I don't know if I bought that number with me right now.
That would be the owner occupied and.
Yeah,
I think you have to include that number is what Laura's saying.
Well, I'm just trying to make sense between, Butch says 121 total cases have gone through the planning board, but then also mentioned 23 cases are done. How does that relate to the 121 that went through the planning board? They would be done too.
That's part of it.
So of the 121 cases, when you say they were through the planning board, mean they're completed their way through the planning board?
No. 121 applications
Came to the planning board.
came to the planning board.
Gotcha.
And there's still a few that are waiting to be referred.
We have,
We have 13 of them we have 13 files in the building department that are pending referral to the planning board yet.
Okay,
So the checks for the planning board have been received, but they haven't been referred yet.
so
okay.
that's on top, I'm sorry, that's on top of the 121?
No, that's included.
That's part of it. That's why the numbers didn't add up.
So they
So-
could be
121 right now or 122
Total.
as of today is the total.
total to planning board.
Yes.
So those 13 could be rejected though,
Theoretically, if you decide you want to, they could.
if we're over the cap.
If
Okay.
it's over the cap, they could be rejected.
So all,
And basically, some of the 56 that are pending in the planning board right now could possibly
be
be.
rejected. So altogether, we have 257, you're telling me?
Well, I heard 122 that
Hold
went.
hold on,
How
Laura.
many total applications?
Total applications,
Total applications in was 277.
right?
But that includes all of them that's everything. That
Right.
includes the ones that have been denied,
And how many-
withdrawn,
How many,
and such. I had 18 of them that have either been withdrawn, denied, or rejected for some one reason or another.
okay. So we're at 259 to go. A max right now of 259.
Yeah.
That's
That's what we.
277 minus 18.
Right.
Which means we have 21 space for 21 more.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
that number sounds.
We
Okay.
Reach the cap. of
We could reject those 13 that have not been processed to the planning board yet, the ones that are over the non-owner occupied cap, correct?
The 13 that have been received without paying fees, but people have paid
Right.
fees, that's a different matter.
Right. So,
Well,
so,
they paid the application fee,
Right, but
yeah,
not,
they haven't
not,
paid an
not the
operating
fee.
fee.
right,
not
right,
the planning fee.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying, they played the inspections have been done,
Oh, but they've done inspections.
we've done
Okay, yeah,
inspections,
yeah,
we've
yeah.
done, they've started the process, and it's just a matter of them sitting.
Right.
Right.
We couldn't reject them without refunding their
Yeah.
application.
The $50 fee.
Sure.
Yeah. yeah.
So I just want to make sure I've got that I've done the right thing with the numbers. There were 277 total applications. Of those, 18 were rejected. That leaves 259. But you said that 121, or actually 122 of those 259 are already at the planning board. If 122 at the planning board, that leaves 137 that are not at the planning board. Are those 137 never going to the planning board because they don't need to?
No, that 137 would be owner occupied,
Okay.
1 or 2 bedroom mostly,
Okay. So,
and not all, but most of them have gotten permitted. I
Okay.
don't have the actual number yet with me.
yeah, that's okay. So 277 total applications, 18 rejected. Of those, that leaves 259 to go. Of those, 122 had a reason to go to the planning board. And of the remaining 137, those are only owner occupied. Some have already been approved and some not yet, but that didn't need to go to the planning board. So we're most worried about the ones that went to the planning board. So my question then is, do we want to make a change about what has to go to the planning board based on SUPs if it's non-owner occupied, if it's less than 3 bedroom? I understand we don't want to make a change right now. We want to let these things flow through the process. Do we want to make a future change though that says if you're not owner occupied, if you're less than 3 bedrooms, you don't need an SUP? Or you
We don't have to make any change. We've already exceeded the cap, so we're not going to accept any more of those.
Right.
Well, we've exceeded the cap now, but I'm talking about a plan for 5 years from now when maybe some people no longer wanted to, they may be no longer active.
Well, we have a cap, and as those dwindle down, we shouldn't let non-owner occupieds renew them.
If they sell if somebody sells one with a current SUP and doesn't pick up within 30 days, doesn't pick up the STR, then we can just simply say that it's only going, it's got to be owner occupied only.
Okay, so
But
we are
any future is only open to owner occupieds.
okay, so we are agreeing no more non-owner occupied than what we already have. We already have too many and no more.
Okay, but that still leaves us with 120 to 122 that are sitting at the planning board, which is what their problem is, I believe. And them getting through all those.
Well, some are done. You said 23 of those 122 are done.
29 are in process and 56 haven't been seen.
Right.
How many are sitting there, Melissa, waiting for action?
The numbers were right. 17 public hearings to be rescheduled, 12 sketch plan reviews to be rescheduled, and 56 files that I haven't touched yet.
About 90 or more.
Yeah.
What was the
And
original
then
cap?
there's probably more, because then we have the handful of few that are in between the building department that I've received money for. So honestly, the number is 122 minus 23.
Well, that's what's left because you did
99.
122, you did 23. The 99 left.
Richard, what was the original cap on the non-owner occupied?
I don't remember the total cap, I believe, which was 350,
But not on the
390,
non-owner?
390, okay. 175, 150.
350, 190, or 340. How did it work out? It was 190 and 150.
Yeah,
Okay.
No, 190 is right, you're right.
340.
Yeah.
Here's the other problem is if all these things go through the planning board, this is all part of the initial batch. If people keep doing this and keep renting the SDRs, they're not coming back for an SUP.
Correct. Once they're done, they're done.
They're done.
Right.
So I don't know.
So one of the questions since we're on the planning board is,
I think, well, let's just solve the SUP problem here.
Let me throw something out there. Richard, don't choke.
I will.
Okay, just hear me out.
Yeah.
And I would only do this if there was full agreement all the way around. But we do have I do have the power of emergency declarations.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
Here comes
I-
Donald Trump again.
I'm not bastard. I'm not pushing it. I'm only throwing it out there as a possibility that if the planning board and the building department reviewed all these and came to a conclusion that, you know, due to COVID and the lack of having public hearings and whatnot, if we wanted to pass them all in one fell swoop, we could get the planning board to put together a resolution, and then I could work on an emergency.
Well, I don't know why that has to be an executive order, but I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
Because I think that's one way we could do it.
So Bill, are you saying that that would just approve everything without having to go through the process?
Correct.
because of COVID, we're grandfathering you in. They're operating anyway, right, Butch?
Yes.
Yes,
So
as long as
it's not like they're waiting to open.
even ones right now, we have so many of them that haven't applied, you know, that are still operating. People that have been told that they can't operate, they're still operating.
Right.
I'm working now on trying to figure out where to move with the violations, and that's.
Yeah. That's something I want to talk about later, but so if we did that, Bill, if we batched them all together.
So I would want a resolution from the planning board stating that we've reviewed all these and that we're comfortable with them. You know, we can look at the language. And then, you know, something from the building department that said that, you know, these are all presently in operation, because we all know that that's the case. And if the town board, if you guys are on board with this, even though it's an executive order, I would only do it if everybody was on board with this.
I have two questions when you're ready.
Go ahead.
So one question is, have each of these had a fire inspection?
There's all of those that are into planning have had fire inspection. If they don't get to the planning board until they've passed that, I won't refer them.
Gotcha. Okay, so they're good in fire inspections. And is there any?
13 that I still have pending.
Yeah, okay.
Have not been totally through the process of that yet.
But they're on their way to that.
They could be.
Yeah, that would not get waived.
Right, okay. And then
Only the public hearing would get waived.
okay, so my second question is whether we as a board wanted to put a clip level and say, we're only going to review the 3 and over, unless everybody's comfortable that we review everything, but we would have the option of saying, here's the clip level. If it's non-owner occupied, only 3 and over will continue the process, but the ones 1 and 2, we won't. That would reduce the number. I don't know if we feel like we need to be reviewing 3 and over for any reason.
The only thing I would say is that I don't know that I would be able to legally discriminate
Oh, okay.
in an executive order. Either we do
Okay.
away with the requirement for a public hearing or we don't. I don't know that legally I would be on solid ground to do it.
Let me ask, I don't know if you can answer this question, Butch, but is there anything in there that if we did this, we batched them all together, we let 1 or 2 slip through, they're total in violation of the law and really shouldn't be happening, which would then open up the fact that, well, you let those guys go through, why can't I go through?
I'm sorry, Richard, which ones are we talking about?
I'm sorry.
Say that again?
If we batch them all together,
Right,
are there any in there that actually would never pass muster?
okay. That,
Okay,
I think.
and if we let them through, does that present problems for somebody else coming down the road saying basically, well, you let them in, why can't I get in?
I think what we would need to do is have the planning board review the applications and weigh in on them and say, you know, we've reviewed all these and we're fine with them, or we've reviewed these and they would reject the ones that are no good. That should come from the planning board.
Okay.
And I agree with you. If there are any bad ones in
Wait,
there,
can we stop there for a second too?
go ahead.
You agreed with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to add to that in the beginning it was a little tough and there were 2 I didn't catch, but I feel like now, I mean, you never know with most of them, but I do try to catch them if they're not following the zoning. I mean, obviously I don't do the inspections, but as far as what I see on the application, majority of the ones I have are all legal and would go through.
Okay. And so Melissa, you in speaking for the planning board would be very happy to have the executive order that said, if you like it and Butch liked it, we can just count them as good. It's
I
not
mean,
like that.
it would be work, but I feel like I can strongly say that the planning board would be very happy with that.
And you know, this doesn't mean that you can give each of them 10 cases and say, look through these and let's sign off on these.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that you have to do all that work.
Yeah, and you save the public hearing.
You save the public hearing, yes.
Yeah.
That was an issue that they discussed in the, under the onset.
Yes.
They didn't understand what, because it was just a rubber stamp, unless unless over the year that they were in operation, there was a violation. That would have been the only reason
Right.
to actually come back. So this is something.
That was the argument that we
Yes.
made, Richard and I made back when we didn't send it to the planning board in the original
It
draft.
had to go because the law required it to go, and that was this, that was.
No. But when we were writing the law,
Oh,
our initial law, our initial draft did not have anybody going to the planning board.
but the town code required it, which is.
No, we were
That's-
writing the town code, Angela. I'm saying way back when we were writing,
You're not talking about the STR law?
I'm talking about the STR law. When we were drafting that, initially, we were not sending anybody to the planning board. It was going to the building department and that was it.
And then we discovered that we had to send.
No, we didn't.
Well, maybe Rich can address that. Because we did.
You do because we adjusted our amendment to reflect that they needed to go. Paul Schultes Jr. was on the board. I think Paul said, no, we should see them. And we said, okay. And that's how that got written in there. But initially our drafts, right, Richard? I mean, correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
and I think, you know, they reviewed it. I mean, we sent it to them and they approved, they went along with it. I think John was part of that too, so.
I remember John went back and forth. I mean, and I don't blame him. One day he thought it was a good idea, and then the next day, he's, why are we wasting our time?
So let's go back. So we're gonna do this batch thing. You're gonna do an executive order. Going forward next year, back to Laura's point, we're dropping this out of the law.
We're dropping what out of the law?
The SUP part, they're going to the planning board.
Well, there won't be any more.
There won't be
I
any.
thought I heard we hit the cap already, so.
There
we're
won't
not-
be
we're not
any.
gonna-
No. I'm talking about, it's written into the law right now.
Yeah,
Right?
yes, but next year, nobody, unless somebody gets rid of one and a new application comes in.
Right. We
Then you
don't-
could go. Then it would be one case before.
Then
the
you're only
board.
talking about one case, no harm, no foul. It can
Okay,
get,
so in that instance, we're keeping it.
we're
I think we could get rid of if we wanted to. I wouldn't amend the law just to get rid of that. I would say if we're doing other amendments, then I would amend that out of it.
Well,
But I think if that's the only.
I just don't want to get, I don't want to get tripped up down the road. That's all I'm thinking of.
Say that again?
I don't want to get tripped up down the road, you know, what's in the law, what's not in the law,
Yeah,
what are they supposed to do? Well, it should be clear.
okay.
Well, but I think that what I'm hearing is in a perfect world, we'd be doing all these SUPs. That we just had too much of a rush right now. So leaving the SUP requirement in the law doesn't hurt for two reasons. One reason is because when they come in onesie twosie, it won't be an issue. And secondly, since we've hit the non-owner occupied cap, there probably won't be too many accepted applications anyway. So for us to accept it, what I heard earlier was for us to accept an application for a non-owner occupied, we'd have to have enough of these non-owner occupied that kind of fell off the plate here to be able to add any more because we're already over the cap. So I don't think we're going to see any SUPs anyway for a while because we're not going to accept any non-owner occupied applications as long as we're too full.
Okay.
As of first of the year, the town board could also think about if we don't meet even the cap as it is with the 23 left, if we don't get those applications in, just close it. We don't allow anymore.
It might
after
not
the
even,
first of the year.
it might not even be that far away. I mean,
Yeah.
we could have a resolution this afternoon to reduce the cap.
Okay,
That it's just a simple resolution.
so if you don't accept any more applications at that point, well, apparently we haven't been on board. So whatever does get decided, we need to know what it is, the right numbers and what's happening.
Yep.
Because there was confusion in that. We didn't.
You're asking a lot there, Butch.
Be informed, Richard?
Communication, Rich.
Hey, no, I thought, well, I'm not sure why it just automatically doesn't go to you, resolution to change the cap.
I don't know why.
I don't send resolutions to different boards, so.
Yeah.
It's not my job.
Yeah, okay. So I guess back to the question I have, since we're talking about the building department and also the planning board. So we had this lengthy discussion. Is there anything else that you see in terms of what went well, what didn't go well? Is there anything that else we should be focusing on with the STR law that could turn into a change perhaps to the law?
Everything at this point is hindsight because of what it went through, and it was a learning curve on doing it. I mean, if a new town was coming up to look at it and had asked me a question, I would suggest that they not accept any non-owner occupieds and keep it very close to what a bed and breakfast law that already exists is.
Hmm.
It was,
Okay.
I think a can of worms got opened up,
I agree.
The internet created a monster, and then this whole thing, just trying to put that genie back in the bottle, has been a hassle.
I agree. And slowly, I think, Butch, the way we do this, because that can of worms did get open, is by adjusting the cap downward each year.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we had an option. I mean, the genie was out of the bottle years before we made the resolution or the law. And I agree with you again, Richard, that, now we'll be able to continually.
I can't stand this.
Kumbaya.
I'm gonna be sick.
We can, continually fine tune our numbers as we go.
Can I bring up one thing, Butch? Because you brought it up, I think, or I know it's floating around there. We never did, when the committee first organized and started to put this law together before it went to the town board, things like tents and glamping were not on the horizon.
Oh,
do we need to address that?
I would suggest something get addressed in it to try to add something, definitely add something to the law, because we have a situation right now where I sent order to remedy violations out for some that were on for running a camp without an SUP, and because they didn't meet the requirements for it, the property was too low and such. And the law or the definition of a camp is 2 or more tents. And they go, well, it's not, it's only 1. And nobody wants to accept that, 260-3 says if it's not specifically in here, it's prohibited. That's a hard one for any of them to swallow, to say, okay, well, if it's only 1, now it's not prohibited because it doesn't exist in the law. So I don't know.
So where do we stand with the one that was going through the ZBA?
I haven't gotten a definite answer on that.
I don't think they voted on it yet.
They haven't.
I don't think it's been voted on yet.
Do you remember what their cry before the ZBA was for? Was this interpretation? Or?
Yeah, and
Yes.
it was believed for interpretation to say that.
Let me
it
just
wasn't a
check
camp
with
because
Michelle.
there was only 1 teepee.
Okay.
But the fact is, in anything for a tent, or to me, it's an accessory structure. It's or an accessory to. If you want to have a tent in your backyard so your kid can sleep out and camp overnight, you're not going to say no to that in a situation. If they put the teepee up and say, it's a learning experience for people that come to stay at our bed and breakfast, at our STR, so they go out and they learn about that. That's fine. It's not the existence of the building being there or the teepee or the tent. It's that the use. They're trying to use it to profit in an instance, and then using the law to say, oh, it's only 1, it's not 2, so it doesn't constitute a camp. They're trying to circumvent the law by it, and it's going to be a fight, because if a determination comes down to say that they don't have to meet, it's not a camp, therefore they don't have to meet the criteria of a camp to be 200 feet away from a lot line, to have 20 acres or more, to have, They're gonna be popping up in everybody's backyard.
But is a tent a habitable space?
Sure.
It's, yeah.
Well, ask Lauren.
It is. It's a place where you sleep, eat, or cook. Well,
Yeah.
you don't cook in it.
But
You know,
does
they
it
do
meet-
with that
does it
TV,
meet-
they go-
But does it meet the legal definition in the building code?
But what you referenced.
Hold on,
There's an issue.
I need to know
When it
what-
comes to the building code and the residential code, one book, if you're in the residential book, you stay there.
right,
There's nothing in there. It's like been purposely left out. There's no membrane structures, there's no tent. It's considered a temporary habitable space. Or there's not even a definition for it. It doesn't exist in the residential code in that sense. It's like they left it out purposely. And
so if it
you know,
does,
if you take a tent out into the woods to camp, it's a habitable space for that night. It's,
right, but it's not a legal space that you could rent.
that's my point to it,
Yeah,
that it's, but it doesn't necessarily,
there's no toilet facilities.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. What about things like plumbing?
exactly, that's,
Facilities,
they have to meet
foundations.
criteria. And you know, but that's open for interpretation as well. It's got to do with, you know, you got to say that any of that campsite or any of that stuff needs to be that 200 feet away from a lot line. If somebody has 100 acres up on the top of the mountain and they have a tent up there and another little tent that's used as their outhouse with cat litter in it, which is exactly what these things have, you know, who's seen it? Who knows? Who cares? It's up there on that big area. But you put it on a third of an acre in a hamlet where I'm sitting out on my deck having breakfast and I'm watching the people next door camping. It's a problem.
Yeah, you mentioned code, but I have my book open. You said, you told us what code you're referencing, and I was looking for it. Which code number were you referencing?
The 260-3 for it being prohibited.
Well, 263 just says application. I got my code book open. Maybe I'm in the wrong spot, but I'm looking at 260
Maybe.
it says application.
I'm pretty sure it's 260-3 that says anything not specifically mentioned herein is prohibited.
Okay, well, anyway, that's okay. It doesn't, okay.
Page 4.
So we should expand the STR law or maybe add a new law to address tents and camping and glamping. I mean, some glamping sites, I know when I was on the planning board, Peter Cross, who had to recuse himself when this came forward because it was his application and he did recuse himself, but he was looking to do glamping on his property. And so he brought a case to the, planning board and then recused himself while we talked about it. And we gave him an SUP to do glamping on his property. But at the time, we made it an annually renewable thing. It wasn't a permanent SUP approval. It was annually renewable. And as he
But I
was,
think-
He had 2 tents and he met the criteria.
I think, Laura, though, they insisted on, didn't he have to bring in a specialized, one of those fancy bathrooms and, you know, that you see at weddings and stuff like that, portable?
Yeah, it was a whole
bathroom.
fancy thing, but he had glamping where it was some fancy thing came in. I don't know whether the bathroom was separate from the tent unit, but it was a very fancy tent
I
unit.
hope it
He
was.
went through the SUP process.
Right.
And got the SUP for it and followed their recommendations.
Right.
Well, 131 Ohio Mountain Road is not following planning board recommendations. 94 Ohio Mountain Road with his TP is not following planning board recommendations because they haven't been through there for an SUP. They're operating a camp without an SUP as far as I'm concerned. As I say it, and I've said this to the zoning board. My feeling is you have to meet the criteria in order to have it. If you decide to have one instead of 2, so be it. But you can't have one unless you can meet the criteria to have 2.
Well, the whole reason that we have a zoning revision committee formed is to work on different things that need to be changed. So what I'm curious about is, it sounds like for tents and teepees and glamping, we ought to have some better wording in the zoning law. So what is the best way to go about that? I mean, do you think there's enough wording there, it's just not enforced? Or do you think we have
Just simply change the definition to say, you know, not, you know, that not more than one, or however it's worded within code like that, to say that, you know, you can't have any tent site on your property without meeting the SUP, you know, so that way, if it's set up for privately, again, my kid is out there camping, it's one thing. But
But
to change the definition for a camp to, you know,
Well, there is a definition of habitable space. Space occupied by one or more persons for living, sleeping, eating, or cooking. Restaurants for employees and occupants, kitchens serving them, and kitchenettes shall not be deemed as habitable space. So it says any space occupied by one or more persons for living, sleeping, eating, or cooking. Habitable space does not say whether it's permanent or temporary. So it would seem to me a tent would be in that. If somebody wants to rent out some space on their property for people to come pitch tents, they're planning to inhabit them. It sounds to me that it's habitable space, even though it's temporary. So the habitable space definition does not preclude temporary spaces. So I'm not sure why habitable space definition wouldn't be okay as is.
well, that's the issue there. And then because it doesn't fit within the residential book, the residential code, there's no codes on it for inspections for fire and other such things because it just doesn't there. I think part of that is probably insurance. If you don't inspect it and allow it and somebody dies from asphyxiation of carbon monoxide because they had a fire in their tent, we're not liable.
Well, so my question is, getting back to the zoning law, if it sounds like the habitable space definition is okay in the zoning law, but as you say, the issue is in the residential code, that sounds like that's not zoning law, that's a different category. So
Yeah,
how do we fix this?
Because even membrane structures in the building code is like in excess of 400 square feet. So they don't even go down to smaller tents. It doesn't even necessarily cover like smaller party tents and stuff like that. It covers it when it becomes huge events, assembly, you know, when they're using tents for bigger assembly space and stuff, then there's benefits into the codes. So I guess they say that certain things are left out of the code on purpose, and I believe that's probably why, for insurance purposes.
So is the residential code you're referencing, is that a New York State code or is that something New York Woodstock put in place? Is it New York
No,
State?
it's New York State residential code.
So is there anything we should be doing in Woodstock to try to do something about tents?
There's definitely something that we should be doing to make sure that people are not setting a tent up for the purpose of using it for transient use to profit. That's my thing that I'm trying to do to stop it when I send it out there, is that they can't use the tent for transient use. So for people coming in to stay, then while they profit. If they use it, set it up as an accessory use for,
Your cousins are overflowing the party, right?
yeah,
Or they can't have a short-term rental, so they're gonna start glamping.
right. That's the thing. The accessory, that was a part of it too, was the zoning schedule of use allows for an accessory use or structure for a permitted use. So if they have the STR and the people that are staying at this short-term rental want to put a tent up for the kids to sleep out in the woods in Woodstock, there wouldn't be anything stopping that. But setting it up to specifically rent it out nightly for $100 a night and profit from it is ridiculous. And they're setting them up all over the place. So I'm trying to nip that in the bud before it gets out of hand.
Butch, what about things like sanitation, bathrooms? Doesn't this also become a problem for the Ulster County Health Department outside of our zoning law?
Well, it could be. Again, on the camp, under the definition of camp, and then going into the zoning for camp, it requires that they need to have approved sewage, approved septic system, approved sewage system with it. And if they're just allowed to put them up because the zoning doesn't exist for it, so they just put it up there, then there's nothing, saying that they need to have that. Now, again, going back to the accessory use, if it's your kid that's sleeping outside, he can go inside to use the bathroom.
Right.
If it's an accessory use to a permitted use, they can go to the bathroom in the STR. They can use the facilities. But when they're just putting them up out there and putting up another little tent with a cat box in it, that just doesn't work for them, And unfortunately, that's the design that Tenter has come up with for them.
Yep.
While we have everybody right here, just want to let you know that the code book, your town law book, has been updated. I just got the updates yesterday. It's all online. So Laura, when you're referring to the zoning law, you're going to have to now get yourself a new one. What we're trying to encourage people to do, though, is to use it online and not have paper copies. So with your zoning revision committee, make sure that they're looking at the new law as amended.
Yeah, well, we will. Although I figure that on my hard copy, I figured, right, probably 95% of it's the same.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the short-term rental law now is in there. So there's a lot of laws, and we're going to have a class possibly next spring from General Code to teach people how to really use it, because it's not being used to its full capacity. So we're working on that, but just so that everybody knows, that code book has been updated. So for any law, they should be looking online.
Okay, so a question I have for the town board is, would you like the zoning revision committee to look into addressing this tense situation, this tense glamping, camping, and trying to beef up the zoning law to address the tent situation? Is that something you want the zoning revision committee to look into?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be part of the STR law, so.
No, it'd be separate, I would say. It'd be separate, but I didn't know whether you wanted the zoning revision committee to pick on that.
Well, keep in mind, the STR is not a separate law. It's part of the zoning law. And
No, I understand. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you know.
and it would all.
And it was a revision of the bed and breakfast law.
Right.
Right, but the STR is its own section, and it would seem to me that the tent, addressing of a tent situation ought to perhaps be a separate section. I know it's all zoning law, but should probably be a separate section.
Well, or it could be as simple as a definition in the back of the zoning law that says tents are not deemed to be habitable accessory structures.
Well, then that would be a problem if, for the purpose of camps or somebody who actually
Had one.
that like Cross that has a legal
Yeah, all right, yeah.
campsite.
Well,
So
unless,
that's there. It's not that you can't have it or have the tent to sleep in and stuff. I just really feel that it needs to be in there to meet the criteria, something that, you can't have one unless you meet the criteria of a camp.
yeah, I guess it seems to me the other thing we could say is, if you're gonna have a tent that is inhabited by anybody other than an immediate family member, it needs an SUP. That might be another way to go about it, is require the tents have SUPs. If any person will inhabit it.
I think you should more concentrate on whether you're making money off it, whether it's an immediate family member. I mean, because when I had my teepee, I had all kinds of friends that used to come up and crash.
Okay.
Right?
You didn't charge them?
No, I never did. They actually wanted to fund me to put up a whole bunch of other world. And I was going to be the aperitif chief.
Now I agree with
Rose
you.
Corral.
Now I agree with you, Lauren.
Yeah, no, you can't. I mean, you know what? Hebner's wife kicks him out. I got a tent. He wants to sleep in it. He should be able to do that.
Can he use
I
the
should
cat
be able
box?
to do that.
You
Especially
should.
if my wife kicks me out.
Your wife kicks you out. I would, I'd offer you a tent. I got a teepee in
You're
the
a hell of a guy, Lauren Rose. Yeah.
You know what? I've heard that before. The hell in there someplace anyway.
So the thought is that the definition for tents, or anyway, we'd have to find it. Anyway, the definition would be any tent for hire requires an SUP. So we're thinking any tent for hire would require an SUP.
I like that a
Okay.
lot better. Yeah.
And would that be a definition of a tents or a definition of,
Should be anything. You got a garden shed or whatever. If you're going to make money on it, then
Well, if you have it as a camp, that I don't know if it's not just making it in that definition, because a camp requires an SUP. And if you need to have that size, the size limit is, the property and stuff, it's already in there. There's in the section for additional uses, camp falls in there. And the whole definition goes through with a camp and needing an SUP and such for that. So it's just a single one on 4 acres shouldn't be allowed. You know, for transient, again, if it's somebody that's got it there for purposes of personal use, I'm not gonna see it on Airbnb. I'm not gonna see it on Tentor. I'm not gonna see it out there being rented.
Right.
So it's not necessarily gonna be an issue about the renting or the structure itself being on the property. Again, it's got to do with it being a camp. And if they're advertising it, I feel it makes it a camp.
Yeah, okay. So, right, we have to look for camp, and then there's also there's a date, so I'll look for a couple of definitions. All right, so it sounds like the town board is interested in having the zoning revision committee take a stab at something that improves definitions so that we have a little better control over tents and camping when they're for hire.
Okay.
So, okay.
And we can all weigh in. If we have thoughts, get them to the committee.
Yep, okay.
So
All right.
we spent a lot of time with the building department. Melissa, do you have anything to add about the STRs?
I don't think so. I mean, there were a few specific cases, but that, I think, you know, it fell under the law.
Well, with that, has there been anything that you've seen go through for an SUP where they have had questions or concerns from the inspection and such that they wouldn't have?
Definition of owner occupied / non-owner occupied always comes into play. I get it. I understand how Butch proceeds when he goes. But there's always some confusion with that and how they're categorized.
What would be the confusion?
Well,
You're either there,
Interpretation.
you're either there or you're not. You live there or you
The
don't.
interpretation of the word live.
Yeah.
That's the definition. It says that must live on the property. What constitutes living on the property?
Oh, boy.
So if it's my primary residence, that's where I live.
Mm.
If I go away for 6 months, does that mean I don't live there anymore? I go on vacation, I take a 3-month tour of Europe. Does that mean I don't live there anymore? No. If I have an apartment down in Brooklyn, but this is my primary residence, where I go there and I work and I stay there for the night, where do I live?
And this is a tough one because you know, it's
We've had
home
this.
isn't necessarily where you lay your head. It's where you get your mailing address and where you vote.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I mean, I know a lot of folks who are technically residents of Woodstock who vote in Woodstock and spend far less than a quarter of the year here.
Now, the bed and breakfast definition in law originally said that it was for a bed and breakfast, they needed to be a resident host. They had to be on the property, live on the property, be a resident host. That's different. Now that says that you have to actually be there
While the business is being
it's being conducted. And that may have been what they meant during it while creating the STR law. But unfortunately, I've just tried to think about that as while going through it.
We debated that then, and I mean, it's hard to, how do you prove?
Yeah.
All you got to do is present a driver's license and.
That's it. So that's kind of where I went with that, was the primary residence. And while trying to figure that out with the primary residence was to say, okay, do they have a star exemption? Because you can only get a star exemption on your primary residence. So I kind of even started doing a little research to see if they had that. But unfortunately there is we have a lot of people that make money over the limit and aren't eligible for the star exemption. So it may still be their primary residence, but they're not eligible for star. So there's only so much I can do in searching it.
Yeah, I do think that we did, we had a lot of conversation, as I recall, about how to make sure we knew if it was somebody's primary residence, and I don't think we came up with a good definition, so I think we didn't really address it. That's my recollection.
The other problem with this is people use it to get around the law. And because then it becomes owner occupied, but they're not really there. And so they can have additional, you know, I've seen this happen before and I've read about it online. It's a tricky one. I'm not sure what to do with it.
In doing it and going for the inspections and seeing how the houses are laid out and what it is, I would say that it really is a handful of the people that are non-owner occupieds that applied as owner occupied and got away with it because they basically say they live here and such, and that's really a handful. Just as many
No, I know.
that are here more often than they're in the city, and they ended up getting put into the non-owner occupied section when they'd spend 80 to 90% of their time in Woodstock.
Okay.
So they just as many, I think, fell in that side of it as well.
Somebody once said it's where you do your laundry.
You could be in the city all week and come up and do the laundry on Saturday.
That's true.
Yeah. We'll put on the application, washer and dryer in house.
It could, yeah. A little personal maybe, but
All right.
Yes.
So I think at this point, we'll move on. You guys can, the town board, we can continue to digest this.
Well, I did have a question though. I'm still looking for the Peter Cross. I only found one Peter Cross memo and it refers to another memo, and I couldn't find the other memo.
Okay, we'll make sure we get it emailed to you, Laura.
Yeah, but my point is we've got the planning board here now, so before we lose Melissa.
Oh, was there anything else in there, Melissa?
Yeah, I can read it. Hang on. I was taking notes, so I threw everything else. I can read it for you. You want me to read it, Laura?
Yeah, well, the only one I see is the one that says, I forgot to add planning board issue operating permits. for
Okay.
inspect. But I
That
don't-
was the end. So the first part was, these are my thoughts on the SDR situation. These are Peter Cross's words. Years ago, when Woodstock was open to the opening of new venues, but not hotels, it was suggested that people rent out rooms in their homes. This arrangement grew into B&Bs, providing lodging for many visitors and supplemental income for many Woodstockers. More recently, speculators have been purchasing properties to list on Airbnb. However, against town code, these particular properties have been operating as non-owner occupied. With the absence of homeowner supervision, in came complaints of uncontrolled parties and excessive noise. Town code has provisions for dealing with the disturbance of the peace. Following are my points as related to the planning board's involvement with SDR regulation. The Woodstock Building Department conducts SDR inspection and is charged with enforcement. They alone should decide on the issuance of permits. 2, there is no need for the planning board to conduct public hearings related to SDRs. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear neighbors' concerns before permission is granted. In addition, the SDR permit can be pulled if 3 violations are reported by the neighbors to and substantiated by the building department. That is their protection. 3, SDR problems stemmed from non-owner occupied rentals where disruptions were occurring. Legal protections already exist for instances of disturbing the peace and should still suffice. 4, residents who have been operating B&Bs for many years with no reported issues should be able to continue operating. Example, the blocks. That was kind of up on our conversation also. 5, the only reason for requiring a public hearing by the PB is for operating a commercial activity on a residential zone. However, change of use does not apply as the use continues to be habitat. And renting a house for a month or for 3 days, for instance, is still for the purpose of renting a dwelling. Last one, members of the PB unanimously believe that the process of reviewing STRs and conducting public hearings has no relevance to the board's process. They consider it a waste of time as it detracts from the more relevant issues. And then he ended with, most important, I forgot to add, the building department issues operating permits for the short-term rentals. Checks them every year, and that should be instead of getting an SUP from the planning board. Peter Cross, Woodstock Planning Board Chairman.
Again, with the bed and breakfast law and it being that an SUP was needed for an establishment was over 3 bedrooms, and mostly because of parking and wear and tear on the roads, excessive traffic in the neighborhood, many different things that could come up that would bring that there. If I have a 5-bedroom house and I rent it to one family that comes up in a minivan, well, that's not an issue. But if the event is that they rent it out and people come from 5 different states, then they have the vehicles. So the the process of that could still be there and need vetting, if that's the case. It's just if it was vetted for a bed and breakfast over 3 bedrooms, it's possible that the STR could be vetted as well.
Well, and Melissa, to summarize what I think Peter said, he didn't think an SUP was needed for any of these STRs. Sounds like he thinks the building department ought to do their thing, and that the planning department and that the planning board doesn't need to be involved in any STR.
Yeah.
That's what we
Gather
talked
that.
about.
Yeah.
Right. Although I think that what we said is we weren't going to change the law. So,
Laura, I'll send you what I submitted to Bill too, so you have it. I'll email you.
okay, thanks. Because I was looking for that and I did not see that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm going to disagree on one thing with Peter on this.
Ashley just sent it again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There is a difference between renting for 3 nights or 6 months or long-term rental, because basically what you've done with the short-term rentals is bring a commercial operation into a residential area that requires, where long-term rentals don't require, that requires inspections, fire inspections and the like. You know, so there is a difference, and the impact on the neighborhood is quite a difference too. So, you know, that's the reason we have a law now, because of the
You rent
impact.
long term, I know who my neighbor is and who's going to be there. You rent short term, you've got a different neighbor every night or every week.
Right. So,
Okay, so I'm gonna move to wrap this up and
well, I'm not done.
okay.
Okay, because no, Melissa brought up things, you know, and we don't, I'm not gonna belabor this, but this involves Butch and everybody. The enforcement issue comes up a lot lately. And Butch, I know, doesn't have a heck of a lot of time to be running around, especially on weekends. He's not here. I don't know how we do this. I don't know if noise complaints from STRs that are filed with the police on a weekend get to.
Hey, Rich.
They should be.
Get to the building department. Yeah.
What we've done, you know, obviously when we have a public hearing and people have come, we have made it a stipulation, and it's in the resolution that there is 3, they have
Right.
three strikes and you're out. So if
That's
they're
in,
called,
that's in the law.
yes.
Okay.
But
Oh,
it's reinforced in the resolution, she said.
So,
Oh, okay, okay.
so if people come and they were 3 instances and we have knowledge of it, then the building department will enact and revoke their permit, and the SUP will be revoked.
Here's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Does the building department get notice of that from the police if there's a noise complaint on a Saturday night? I don't know that.
I don't even.
Have you gotten any, Butch? Is Butch going?
No, we haven't.
So, you know.
I've
I don't
only
know
seen one police report in all of this. I've only seen one police report at a public hearing, and it was only one. And I was like, well, now they have the SUP, so it starts now.
Right. And I know there's lots of other things going on. I don't know if people are posting their number on Airbnb or not. You know, we don't need Butch to sit around a computer all day either to check that. I can tell you one Airbnb that has 2 bedrooms, but there's always 3 or 4 cars parked out front. You know, that's a violation. So I don't know how we improve this at all, but I think if people know we're serious about enforcement, we get fewer and fewer people just trying to get by without going through the system at all.
Well, the enforcement side of being serious with it is really going to be when we get to court. And I want the town board, when it comes to that side, to think, I think getting somebody like John McGovern to be the prosecutor for these cases when they come up, you know, I don't have a problem sending them there, but you know, I don't know that I could. I don't know that I have the knowledge.
We have engaged
prosecute
John to prosecute all our zoning issues.
Okay.
So
But how does the violation get registered is what I'm saying.
Well, it starts with a letter. Everything starts with a letter letting people know that they have a violation and to cease.
Right. But you're saying you're not getting any.
Yes, if I find a violation, I send a letter explaining that the violation exists. If they don't get rid of it, then they receive an order to remedy violation. Basically, it's a 3 strikes you're out type situation there too. They receive a letter, they receive an order to remedy violation, then they receive an appearance ticket.
What I'm asking, Butch, though, is it's not really in your lap. Why can't the police forward these noise complaints to the building
That's a
department?
question. That's a question for Clayton.
Well, I know, and that's what,
Yeah.
but those are questions that got to be asked.
Well, if it falls, the noise, I think noise is its own ordinance.
Yes,
It doesn't
It would-
fall under the zoning,
it would need
So
to.
it
No,
could-
but it's a violation.
enforced by the police
Yeah,
directly.
but what Richard is saying is that we need to make sure that the police are informing the planning building
Oh, yeah.
process
That
that
is,
there are violations.
yes,
So
absolutely.
if I have an STR and I have a Wiles party and I get yelled at for being too noisy, that's a slap.
Yeah.
So now you should be notified of that.
And along with that,
Do they have to write the violation? If they go there and they say, hey, you're being too loud, close it down, and they close it down, it's a warning, and they walk away.
It's not a
we need-
violation.
Yeah, it's not a violation. You need something.
well,
that's
see,
written.
Yeah, but it
that's
should
where
be.
we got to talk more about this, because I think it is a violation. If you're the next door neighbor, it sure hell is a violation.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Absolutely.
But that's
So-
not what the law says. So we may want,
That's what I'm saying. We got to address this because, and you know too, Bill, you've had the problem where you
Yeah.
have people making noise and parties going on. And if you read what's been going on in the STR with Airbnb about party houses, especially during the COVID era, these things are popping up all over the place. And, and so if there's a noise violation, how many people are at that house at the time the violation is reported?
Right.
Are there 10? And there's only 2 bedrooms? I mean, those are the types of things we should be thinking about.
and again, those we're going to have to talk to Clayton about. But we have executive session with him a little later on.
Yeah, is that
Yeah,
on
where'd that
Zoom?
come from?
Is that on Zoom, by the way?
I'd like to do it in
Didn't they
person.
already? No, didn't they already do an interview?
I did it. I did this already.
Yeah, they did their interview and now they're bringing the top 3 candidates to us,
Yeah,
which is
I
what they
But
usually do.
why were Reggie and Lauren there the other day then? And I was supposed to be there.
Because Reggie brought up that he thought it'd be a good idea if at least one town board member was present for the first interviews.
So I am unavailable to be in person. I am available on Zoom and I'm not available in person.
Okay, I think we can get Zoom if it need be.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't want to do it in person with that many people.
Yeah, I mean, I sat through the interviews and I told Clayton what I always told him, and the 2 sergeants, McGrath and oh Jesus,
Van de Bogart.
yeah, my friend from Wittenberg, I've known my whole life, but his name just went out the window. I told him, I said, look, you guys run a good department. You pick who you want. I'm behind you. I don't, they got to work with them. They all kind of sit there and give you cookie cutter answers from the academy anyway. So I don't need to sit through it again. Personally.
And I saw that starts at 4:30.
Yes,
Is Butch still here?
Yep,
yes,
Butch, thank you very much.
yep.
you're welcome.
Yep, I agree.
Yes, very, very nice, Butch, very
And
informative.
Angela and Kristen and Melissa.
Absolutely.
The same as
everybody-
Melissa, yes.
Everybody
who-
here has done a great job.
So before we break though, we ought to be looking at Jeff Collins's items. I didn't know whether we're, because Jeff Collins sent that, there was the email with Jeff Collins' 3 items. He said he'd be here late. I don't know who the Collin
Well,
user.
let's see if he comes in. In the meantime, we can wrap this up for now. I got a couple of resolutions I want to go through. We can let the building department get back to work and Melissa get back to work. And then if Jeff comes in, we can talk about it. And if not, we can, if we want to wrap it up, we can talk
Well,
about it.
I would like to talk about Jeff's, because I mean, I was part of the conversation in the zoning revision committee, so I feel like I can talk to Jeff's things. We'll do your other resolutions first, see if Jeff comes.
Yeah,
But if
and then we
he
can
doesn't
talk
come,
about
But if he doesn't come, I'd like to go back to his things, even if he's not here.
it. Okay, great. So you guys are good to go. Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Take care.
thank you very much, all of you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Nobody said it's gonna be easy. It's a job. It's supposed to suck.
I love my job.
There you go.
I still feel privileged.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good day, guys.
Are you going to make it a Zoom meeting for the 4:30 for the interviews today?
I think the board would like that, so yes, we can do that.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, so be it resolved to accept the resignation of James Armstrong from the Zoning Board of Appeals effective 10/19/2020. Be it further resolved to accept, thank James for his hard work.
Thank you, James.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to accept the resignation of Patricia Brescia Cantine from the Housing Committee effective 10/26/2020.
Second.
And be it further resolved to thank Patricia for her hard
Yeah.
work and effort.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to accept the resignation of Tony Giamo from the Como Stewardship Advisory Committee effective November 10th, 2020.
I'll second that. And thank him for his service.
Oh, excuse me, I didn't write those down. And to
Yeah.
add, yes, to thank him very much for his service and efforts.
And we miss Tony G.
He's still in town though, right? He just moved.
He comes up, runs his shop, but he's moved to Cohonk.
Okay, so do I have a second for that? Lauren, was that you?
I'll second it, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to appoint Marilyn St. John to the Como Stewardship Advisory Committee effective November 10th, 2020, term to expire 12/31/2020. Second.
Second.
Yeah, I don't know anything
I don't
about
know.
her.
Second.
We got her resume.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got it, but if she's who I think she is, I'm good with it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think she is who you think she is.
I hope
What
so.
if she isn't who she thinks?
So I did send out other resumes too, Stephanie Kaplan and Georgia Cohen.
I read those, yeah.
Okay, so be it resolved to appoint Stephanie Kaplan to the Woodstock Human Rights Commission effective November 10th, 2020, term to expire 12/31/2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Be it resolved to appoint Georgia Cohen to the Woodstock Human Rights Commission effective November 10th, 2020, term to expire 12/31/2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I see these are all ending this year, so we'll get to do them again in January.
Yes, but technically I have to put that date down and we can
Mhm.
just, unless there's a strong objection at the organizational meeting, their names will be on there.
Yep.
Be it resolved to authorize the supervisor to sign the agreement with Lime Energy Services for lighting replacement at the Woodstock Highway Garage.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Okay, and that's, we've talked about, we've got a bunch of lights out there that we need to replace anyway. So this will replace them all with new LED energy efficient lighting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now I put the other one on. I have not heard back from anybody. This one is for the police station. We don't have to vote on it today. If you want to talk about it more, or think about it. This is an even better deal. I don't have it in front of me, but the cost is just under $1,800 to replace all the lighting in that building with energy efficient lighting.
Didn't we?
I would
Did
say
you-
I would be happy to go for it.
Wait, this is the town hall?
This is town hall.
So seems like it hasn't been that long. That's what I'm wondering. I mean, $1,800, you're right, it's cheap, but what did we put in there? Squirrels with generators?
Candles.
I
Squirrels with candles.
don't know. To me, it doesn't make sense. The highway garage should have been a better deal. It's just the way it worked out, and they were not LEDs at the time.
So we don't have LEDs in town hall.
No.
Well, the town hall, they could do most of it with ladders. The highway department, they got to bring a lift in, and so that gets into a little bit more money.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason, I'm sure, but they were able to get a better rebate for the town hall for some reason. It's part of it may have to do with the town hall being, especially the police and dispatch, it's a 24-hour 7 and 24-hour operation. So the lights are on more, there's more usage there, and therefore more benefit.
So are they fluorescent today? So you say they're not LED, does that mean they're fluorescent?
They're fluorescent, correct.
I mean, I think.
We're meeting next Tuesday again, if you guys want to go and do a little more research.
Did you send something? I didn't see it, so.
I did.
I read it.
I didn't check.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
I mean, I am happy to go with it because I think it makes sense for us to convert over to LED and we're doing the effort. So I would vote yes, but if everybody else wants to table it and look at it, I'm fine with that too.
I'm a little worried about the dirty electricity from the LEDs.
So what?
I think he's being a smart ass.
I was being smart.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Reggie.
Glad somebody grasped what I'm trying to do here.
I'm trying to look to see when I,
Did we get a second, or what did we decide to do with that?
no, I didn't make the resolution yet. We're still waiting. So Ashley did just resend that. So what's your pleasure? We can put it off. We can, when we come back at 4:30, if you all want to take a minute to look at it at 4:30, we can have a vote on it. You want to wait till then?
Who's coming back?
You all are.
I've been there.
Question.
Reggie and I were already there.
So what do you want to do?
Well, after the executive session, will we be appointing police officers? Will that be?
No, there'll be no. There'll
Was
be
this
no.
scheduled for this morning, Bill? I'm sorry.
What's that?
And
Was
you know,
this-
not during the
Yes,
day.
the chief called me this morning and asked if we could do the interviews.
There was an email partway through the day that said we have executive session starting at 4:30.
He thought we were meeting at 7, so that's why he asked.
Okay.
And
I have another meeting scheduled, but I could try to get out of it. But
Well, we've been there. We've been there, Reggie. We said.
I know there was one though I didn't meet. There's one I feel great about, and one I didn't meet. So I'll try to make it.
The detective from Ulster is over the top, Reggie.
From Ulster.
Yeah, she's a detective in Ulster. She's part-time in New Paltz.
Okay. And the
Way
middle
over.
one I feel great about. It's just the last one that I didn't.
Yeah, that's the one you missed. She's way overqualified and
No. I'm saying I think she's at the top of the list.
yeah, no, she's
And the one in the middle, we both sat in on. And the
Mhm.
third one at the bottom is the one that I had to leave before I got to hear him. But anyway,
Troy O'Connor.
Roy O'Connor, yes.
Troy O'Connor.
Corey Schmidt, I was a part of that one.
Okay. Okay, so what do we want to do about Limelight? You want to hold off until later or next week? Reggie?
Yes.
You
I'm
want to
sorry.
hold off on the lights for the town hall till next week or later on?
I don't see why we would. I mean,
You're good with voting?
I'm good
Lauren?
moving forward. If they need the lights, they need the lights.
You're good with voting?
I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Okay, Lori, you're good. Hepner?
Yeah, okay.
Everybody else is good, so you're, okay, so be it resolved to authorize the supervisor to sign an agreement with Lime Energy Service Company for lighting replacement of the Woodstock Police Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This will make David Gross very happy.
That's one of my goals in
You
life.
told us that before the vote.
What's that?
Right.
You told us that before the
Yeah.
vote.
Well, the
I didn't want to jinx it.
Right. We could have torpedoed that.
yeah.
All right,
Was asking about the LEDs, so the WC will be happy.
okay. That's it.
Well, we had the Jeff Collins stuff for the ZBA stuff for the for STR law.
Mhm. So if you want to talk about it now, that's fine. If you want to wait, because we're not done talking about this, we're going to have, in fact, we can next week have another discussion with it.
Right. So
I mean, we should.
I'm looking at the email that Ashley sent us today at 11:16, and it forwards Jeff Collins' concerns. What I wanted to share was when this came up at the zoning revision committee, and Jeff Collins and Mike Castiglione were both there. and they said they felt like their hands were tied a little bit on the ZBA because, and this confused me, but anyway, that they felt like they had to kind of adhere to the zoning law. But in my view, the whole reason why cases go to the ZBA is if they want to do something outside the zoning law to get permission. But they felt like they still had to adhere to the zoning law because they didn't want to be setting precedent. If they let somebody do something, if they let one person do something, they felt like they were setting precedent. So I think part of the concern.
There's some truth to that.
Well, there you go. So this is what they were. So the concerns that. So I'm looking at Jeff's information. I know they had a couple of cases that he outlines here. There was a case where there was a pre-existing STR, and as we all know, pre-existing weren't really legal anyway, right? But in any event, it says that you can't have an STR in a flood zone. The zoning code does not allow STR in a flood zone. So it had 3 issues. This is issue number 1. Zoning code does not allow STR in a flood zone. However, the STR was previously grandfathered as an auxiliary apartment, which is also disallowed in a flood zone. But they were already grandfathered. And the thought was that they're really better off having this apartment as a STR, because if it's a full-time residence for somebody and it floods, you have a problem. If it's an STR and it floods, then you don't have anybody that's their primary residence. And so they were concerned that they were not allowed to approve it as an STR because it was in a flood zone. So that was the first of his 3 items.
Here's my problem with that, though. And I don't know if this is still the Clayton one, Horsey one.
Yeah, Clayton Horsey.
Is that still floating out there?
No, it was approved.
Yeah, they've already approved, I know, one at least in a flood zone. But more importantly, I disagree with the fact that, I mean, if you're here for a weekend and all of a sudden there's a horrific flood, you're going to be less inclined to expect it than if you live here year round. So I don't understand that argument. But don't forget, the intent of the STR law is to make available as much as possible long-term rentals. Okay, our job isn't, the intent of the law isn't to open up the world to STRs. It's to create a market as well for long-term rentals. If we limit STRs, in other words, we have an opportunity to open up for more long-term rentals.
Right,
So,
but his point is, if you make a flood zone and if you can't make it an STR, you're stuck making it a long-term rental. And if you make it a long-term rental, you're really messing somebody up if you get a flood, because now they're losing all of their stuff in their primary residence. Whereas if it's an STR, it's nobody's primary residence. So if anything gets ruined, it's the owner's stuff gets ruined, not the person that came in for the weekend. So, but if the consensus of the board is we want to keep it that way, so be it. But that was one of his issues.
And we did speak about that last year. I remember it came up around flood zones and that same thinking. I think the Laura just referenced that if it's in a flood zone, if it's an STR, if it's gonna, you're calling for heavy rain, or if you had a lot of rain, you would cancel the STR. You're not gonna have people come in the middle of a flood.
You think so? You give people more credit than I do, Reggie.
Just a little bit more, not much.
Not much, but so this was approved as a rental, correct?
Well, he said it was grandfathered as an auxiliary apartment.
As an auxiliary apartment.
It was grandfathered. It's also disallowed in flood zone.
That's how it stays. The law says you cannot have a short-term rental in the flood zone. So they have a rental in the flood zone, which you couldn't do now either. But
he said it's grandfathered.
It's grandfathered in. That's what it is. So that's what it is.
Okay. So no change. Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay. It doesn't sound like anybody disagrees with you. Richard didn't want to see more STRs anyway. The second one that he had in this case,
I think it's more dangerous for a short-term rental to be there than a long-term renter too, frankly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because they're, instead of watching the Weather Channel, they're going to be getting a latte uptown someplace.
Right. Okay.
But it's not like it's also going to be a river and it's raining, and next thing you know, an hour later it's monsoon.
Well, it's happened.
It can come up pretty quick. But
yeah.
Okay. All right. So the second item, and I can share my screen if it makes it easier, or you could look this stuff up because it was just sent out earlier today. But anyway, His second item, in this case, there was a main building used in an STR and a separate building that was being used as a long-term rental. Under the new law, they would not be able to rent the STR enough of the year to manage financially. The only option they could rent the STR for enough of the year would be to evict the tenant in the long-term rental. Then it would be considered owner-occupied STR, and it would not be limited to 180 days. The issue here is, in order to satisfy the law to keep the STR, they would eliminate a long-term rental. So
that would make no sense to me. Where does the owner occupied come in? If they're getting rid of
the main building was used as the STR. A separate building was being used as a long-term rental.
Right, right. So where's the where's the owner live?
Well, that is a good question.
Yeah.
The only option to rent the STR for enough of the year would be evict the tenant in the long-term rental, then it's owner occupied. So that's a good question.
But that also doesn't make sense. You got to, I realize the long-term renter is paying less than the STR rental, I'm sure.
Right, okay.
But, but hold on. If you go make them both STRs so he can make his money, you got a whole year for a long-term renter and half a year for a short-term renter. They want to switch it to a half a year for 2 short-term renters. It doesn't make sense to me at all on that level either. Money-wise, it doesn't make sense. But my first question is, where the heck's the owner living?
Well, that's a good question. I'll ask that question. And then the third item, he talked about there were 2 buildings on the same property that had been separate STRs. This is no longer allowed because the owners can only own 1 STR. In the end, they were given the option of renting the buildings as a single STR compound to convert one of them to an LTR. I guess I'm not quite sure what the issue is here.
You know, I just want to point out one thing with that case. They were not legal STRs because STRs were not legal in Woodstock before we changed the law.
Right.
So whatever they thought they had.
Obviously, though, this is non-owner occupied, right?
They didn't really say. It says,
right. Well, they wouldn't have. They could have, if the owner was there, they could have 2 bedrooms and rent them out. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
so, okay.
But,
so
the other point is, read it again, Laura, just real quick.
In this case, there were 2 buildings on the same property that had been separate STRs. This is no longer allowed because the owners can only own 1 STR.
Yeah, so non-owner occupied.
In the end, they were given the option of renting the buildings as a single STR compound to convert one of them to an LTR.
Yeah, that's what it was, compound. It sounds to me like they're inventing a new term or category of the STR law, which they're not allowed to do.
So there is no such thing as a single STR compound.
I've never, Bill, there's no compound.
You know, I mean, if you have a property that you're renting out, whether there's 1 unit or 3 houses, it's all 1 rental. What we said is you couldn't have 2 separate ones on a property. So if they have a house with a cottage that's got an extra bedroom, they would rent it out all as 1, but then it would be treated as the total number of bedrooms.
Right.
I don't think our law distinguishes between multiple buildings.
But can they advertise them? Can they advertise them separately?
No, it's 1 rental unit.
Yeah, see, that's what's going to happen.
That's my question. Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
So
it also sounds like, it sounds like it's not owner occupied, which they would not be permitted to have 2 separate buildings. So they'd only be allowed for 1.
They're only allowed 1 rental.
Right.
But I don't know that our law makes a distinction between having 2 separate buildings as 1 rental.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, if it doesn't, it should, because again, you're losing.
That may be what we want to change.
You're losing a long-term rental opportunity there. So.
Yeah. So anyway, so this one, Sally, just it is what it is. So I'll respond with some notes to Jeff. It's too bad that he wasn't able to attend.
Tell him we'll probably talk about it more next Thursday or Tuesday.
So he can bring it forward on Tuesday.
Yeah, if you know, we did this afternoon to make it convenient for the employees. Now, if the volunteer board members, you know, want to tune in next Tuesday in the evening after work, you know, we're not done talking about this.
Yeah. Okay. We had a really good conversation today, though.
Yeah. Yes, I think it was a good start.
Oh, I was on the edge of my chair.
I saw that. I was getting worried you were gonna tip right over.
I almost did, yeah. Fortunately,
You got up.
I belted myself in, so.
Well, what, we
I'm
even got
gonna
up and
let-
walked away for a break, so I guess that it was more than you could handle, I guess. It was exciting.
It was
I'm
too
gonna wait.
exciting.
I'm gonna wait for the movie to come out.
Who's gonna play you, Richard? Who do you want to play you in the movie?
Oh, we're getting Matthew McConaughey to play him.
Yeah. All right. All right. All right.
All right, yeah, all right, all right.
I was thinking Richard Dreyfuss.
Well, short.
Oh, well. So anyway, so somebody sent us a Zoom.
Jackie,
link.
who do you want to play you?
I'm not in that movie.
Oh, yes, you are.
Oh, yes, you are.
Angelina Jolie.
Ooh.
I
Ooh,
gotta
there
pucker
you
up my lips a little bit more.
Just
I want either Slim Pickens or Strother Martin to play me.
Isn't Slim Pickens dead?
I think he is. Yeah, Strother Martin probably is too, but what the hell?
We'll stick one of them in a chair and call it a day.
Yeah, that'd be good, yeah.
Oh, well, so do we know who call-in user is? I didn't know if that was somebody that we knew.
I think that's Felicia. So just, we should note that the press, Nick Henderson was here from the Hudson Valley One, and Felicia Kasich from Woodstock 104.1 FM. So
Cool.
we had good representation from the press.
There you go. So we're looking for an email from Ashley for the Zoom for 4:30.
It'll be this. We're not going to close the meeting. You just come back to this.
Come back to this.
Yes. So
Sure.
I'm going to move to recess the meeting until 4:30, at which time we will entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of interviewing candidates for part-time police officer position.
Second.
So the motion is to
I
move it.
did not have. I did not have 24 hours notice about this, so I think this is.
The meeting's continued.
No, about.
Good meeting, Richard.
No. All right.
You had 7 days notice. All in favor of recess?
Aye.
All right, I'll see you guys at 4:30.
I love recess.
I do always did.
I always did.
I leave the meeting. You just keep it open, right, Ashley? Okay. I'll keep it open too.
How are you?
So, no problem.